Thank you very much. One is, before I start, I'm hoping everyone is hanging in there. It's been a tough period for everyone across the globe, but I think we're also discovering a lot about each other, a lot of alternative ways to do business, and I think there's a lot of ingenuity that's coming along. What we do here at what we do at Facebook, and why I've agreed to, when John reached out to me and he said if there's something we could do, I think we've seen a lot of impact. Our companies, like most businesses are impacted, but our company was ready to work digitally. We work across the globe. We do our trainings digitally. We interact with team members that don't necessarily sit in the same office. So when we had to shift to a work from home environment and shift our trainings or meetings into online versions of it, it was something that moved smoothly. And what I wanted to share, and before I start, is there is something fundamental about Facebook that makes it a strong tool during these times.
Ever since, even prior to the lockdown, the goal of Facebook has always been to bring people closer together, to build community, and allow people to interact and build relationships. And you can look at that at different levels, either at an individual one-to-one where you talk to your friends, your family, or you talk to a group, micro groups like the community such as this one, or you post something out to a broader public and just hope that your voice is heard. So that's generally what's there. And what I thought when John reached out and said, is there something we could do to talk to trainers and facilitators, I thought, like, there's so much that we can actually use. And it was actually difficult to say, how could I turn this down?
As I was saying, there are three things that I thought I could impart today. And I think you guys could take away and use immediately. So the first one is I'll discuss about Facebook groups. How can you get it started? What are tricks and tips that you could use to leverage and grow it? And how do you manage your community? The second is, how do you start running presentations or reaching out a broader public? And I think my thoughts around how trainers are, you guys are influencers, even teachers, trainers, preachers. You guys can actually influence and drive a community. And there are tools that we've built for that, and there's a way that you could broadcast. Lastly, I was thinking that, how do you stay connected? And I'm sure a lot of us already have or have used Messenger or using some sort of messaging platform. But how do you utilize this at a scale? So these are things that I'll cover today. And then as an added bonus, I'll close today with a tool that we've actually built for corporations. So if you're an HR person and you're having difficulty and it's your job to sort of redesign how your company sort of communicates in this situation, there is a tool that's been built just for it. So with that, let me move forward and talk about Facebook groups. So when you think of Facebook groups, I'm sure a lot of you probably have joined one. The fact that you're part of PSTE is already a sign of that. But a fun fact about the Philippines is that we are a very community-driven country. So much so that the Philippines has the most number of groups. We have about 1 million groups and growing versus any country in the world. And that's because we do everything from buying, shopping, to just interacting, hobbies. So personally, there are things that I have as a personal hobby. I love motorbikes. I love biking, and I'm part of these groups, and we discuss everything from how do you do one thing to how do you build and even trade parts or buy stuff, right? So how do you bring that into a corporate training or a facilitation environment? So first, you have to understand that the groups allow you to announce and communicate. I know that we have tools such as email marketing, but if you have a group and you have a subscriber base, there's an easy way to say, hey, this is what's happening. Two, if you're a facilitator or trainer and you've created content, there are ways to share that content and make it reach further. So by creating files, videos, documents, these are things that can help facilitate. Third is that events is a very powerful tool. If you think of things that come up, how can you build awareness about things or sharing opportunities that you've put out? And fourth, I think we're testing that today. We're actually running live videos as well. So this allows people to see, share real time, interact, comment, provide feedback, and allows you as a communicator to almost have a two-way relationship throughout that exercise. Other than that, there are certain things that are specific to a learning group. So there is a way that you build a group that is generic, but what I wanted to share is that there is also a learning specific group. And if it is a learning specific group, there are ways that you could put out learning units like modules, step 1, step 2, and how they go through that. And you could put out quizzes and track your community if they've taken that quiz, and you could even follow up, almost like running a class, but you could run that at scale. So how do you get started? If you've never created a group, it's very easy. You can just simply go to facebook.com/groups and start with your group. But if you're going to start with your group, there are a few things that I'd like you to keep in mind. First is, why are you creating that group? Because if you create one that's already there, doesn't add value, or doesn't actually push something new, it's harder to build momentum and build connectivity within that group. So once you said that and you want your group, and you're saying, for example, you want a group for, say, the students that you used to work with, then you might probably look for something a bit more private. However, if you're starting something new, you're starting and you're looking to scale, there maybe your privacy setting is a bit more broad. You also have ways to limit what people see, what people share, how they interact, and how new members are brought into the group. Is it invite only? Can people just randomly join? Or do you need to have filters on how they join or not? But once you've had that idea set, the next step you have to do is actually communicate that. Make sure it's clear. Why are you creating that group? What is it that you intend to come out of that group? How do you want people to interact? What are the rules that you set up? So that moving forward, that follows a certain guideline. So there are so many things, and if you look on the net, there'll probably be over 100 different tricks on how to do it. But I thought, okay, let me trim that down to the basic 5. And so 5 things that I would share with you if you're to start your own group is start with a handful of engaged people. Why? Because if you think about the internet today, the interaction is real time. Unfortunately, you can't limit it anymore to office hours of, oh, comment only or message only between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Suddenly you have people interacting with you at 2 a.m. in the morning, people interacting from other regions or markets. So having a support structure within that group that know what your objective is, know what your agenda is, enables you to interact broader and wider. So how do you do that? You actually see people within the group that are interacting already. You see, and you can almost reward them by saying, hey, you know what? I like your ideas. I like the way you contribute. I'll make you a moderator. And that actually brings more collaboration into the group. Doesn't have a one-sided, only your ideas are brought into play on how to improve it and grow it. But you get a group or a team that's now driving the same objective or agenda together with you. Next is make people feel heard, right? If it is a community, people join communities with the intent of finding something shared, something in common. And so when people join in, either by posting a comment of who they are, maybe something simple like sharing, like for example, for my motorbike group that I am a part of, like once you join, the question they ask is, can you post a photo of the motorbike that you have? And then you'd start seeing people interact, whether they like it or questions about how you've built it. But now on a training module, you could put in stuff like asking questions. What is something that they're looking to learn? What is something that they feel is a current challenge that you will help you design the content that you even build? So utilize that community for yourselves. Next is that, you know, it's a broad world and we can't always have everyone seeing our agenda, our objective. So there's a way that within the group, as an admin, you could already manage the way that they interact. If a person is there just to sort of pull everybody's sort of mood down, you can already start removing the way that they comment, or even to the point of blocking or banning a person because of the way they connect with you. One tip here, and I know a lot of you probably have been doing email marketing, have been doing SMS, have a website, is that you put in information on how to find your group, right? And that's an initial start. Then alternatively, within Facebook, maybe later on, if you're actually enjoying the platform, there are ways to find people with similar interests and target them through the way that they've interacted with your promotions or your videos. For example, today, now that we're running some live videos, the question there is, you'd start seeing people who've interacted with that and say, okay, would you like to join the group? There's also a way to invite people based on how we see the profile of your community to be. And Facebook would suggest you may want to invite these certain people, and you can look through building it that way. Now, if you think of the old school way would be, oh, you have a Dropbox, can you drop your calling card? Can I build you or add you into my community? It's a bit tedious. So this one makes it extremely simple, and you could almost grow your community at a faster rate than ever before. Now, specific for this community, something I wanted to share was how you could run it into a social learning group. So when you create a group, there's a way that you define what type of group that is, right? So you could change the group type into social learning, and social learning enables you to do so many things. As I mentioned earlier, you could run quizzes, you could track the activity done by each individual within the group. So you could know if somebody's lagging behind, having a hard time, and almost treat it as if you were a teacher or a facilitator, where you could go to each individual within your class and say, okay, where do you need help? How can I help you? And also track if they're progressing along with the rest, or should you have a cutout of your group where some people are progressing faster and are getting bored, or some are dragging and need probably further explanation. So try to explore this. I will be sharing with John, and probably will share it in the group, with links for more information. But one tip before I move on is, on groups, there's a lot of us, and as we shift from the way we used to work, right? A lot of us used to build email marketing, and we tried to write a lot of information. The problem is your community is no longer accessing an email through the old ways where you had to be sitting in front of a laptop, in front of a desktop, and actually 100% focused. Your information as a group post is competing with information about family, friends posts. And the content quality and type has shifted. So if you think of Facebook, say 5-10 years ago, when you say, if I were to say, I'm having great lunch, I'll try to describe the fried chicken I'm eating. And I'm going, Ash is eating Kentucky Fried Chicken, and it's nice and crispy. But today, how do people post? They post videos or photos to capture attention. Not a lot of text, but you already get the sentiment and the message a lot faster. And to clarify that note, one thing I'd like to point out is that the way we absorb data has changed. We consume data so fast that it takes 1.7 seconds to capture a message through an ad. And if that's the case, why should your post within a group be any different? Try to be a bit more creative and share that information. Less text, but you could already communicate with it. So with everyone watching, I'd like to run a little experiment and pay a little bit of attention to your screen, because there's a quiz. So let's start with the experiment. Ready? All right. Now, I hope you all saw that. Now, I would guide you all to go to Mentimeter. Let me present that and share that with you. Go to www.menti.com and use the code 995232. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. But if you've been in any of John's presentation in the past, you'll be able to see this slide. So if you were looking and you saw, let's start seeing how many answers we see here. All right, we're starting to see responses. Okay, this is making me happy. All right, so I'll answer the question already, even if we have just about 50 or 60 people who have answered. So the correct answer is, yes, there were 4 pieces of information shared to you in less than 2 seconds, right? So if you see that, then you understand that, hey, I could share so much information in less than 2 seconds. Now, let's push that test a little further. My question now is, do you remember what you saw? What were they? And I'm crossing my fingers here that you actually remember. Awesome, this is beautiful. All right. There we go. Okay. So I'm seeing so many words. I'm actually very, very happy that a lot of you are a bit nerdy and you guys know that it's Princess Leia that came out there, not the Statue of Liberty, not just any woman. Nike, Coke, Target. So as you can see, within 2 seconds, we were able to share so much information and a lot of you got that. So why is that the case? Why do you think you were able to understand that there were 4 pieces of information? You guys could remember who was there: Leia, Coke, Nike, Target. That is because information is passed to the brain through our eyes. 90% of what we remember is visual. So with that, when you shift and you start communicating through presentations, make sure that you enable that. Once you shift also and start communicating through your groups, make sure that your message is understood visually. In the start of our presentation, when the audio wasn't working, John commented that, you know what, we get the gist, we get the message, even if you can't hear what was there, because visual is a very powerful messaging tool.
Okay. So I think it's very essential that you share to us like what are some great tips, especially about putting some content through like on a more visual level. But let me just step back a bit in as far as the use of Facebook group is in building communities. You see, a lot of the audience that you have right now are very talented training facilitators and learning development practitioners. These individuals are by themselves and within certain groups of people very strong influencers already. So I'm very curious why do you think Facebook, or how do you think Facebook will be able to help them increase their reach as micro influencers, just like that you mentioned, so that they can intensify the learning and the talent that they have, so that will ripple to other people as well? Why is I guess my question is, why is Facebook one of the best tools to do that?
Well, one, thank you for the question. I think there's a couple of reasons why Facebook is a good micro influencer tool. One, in terms of time spent on the platform, if you think of the Philippines, if a lot of you think of, so my background's advertising, and if you think of advertising, when I was studying, when I was probably starting out my career, everybody, all my mentors used to always talk about TV and TV ads as the holy grail. And the reason for that is because TV used to have broad reach and a lot of focused attention. Now, if you think of the time spent in TV in the past, on an average day, people would start their day with looking up at watching news in the morning, coming back home and probably watching free-to-air TV for a lot of the content that they consumed within the day. And that makes an average person spend about 2 hours a day on TV. But what you've seen that's changed over the past, say, 4 or 5 years is that people now access most of their information, their reliance, like probably even locked down, being at home with complete TV access. A lot of you are still getting your updates through your mobile phone, you're online on your phone or laptop, even more so. So the internet and the mobile phone has changed the dynamics, and Facebook is a mobile first platform. And that allows people to connect, get notified when something's live and happening, gets to share. So unlike TV, if you miss the show, it's gone, right? You're having to wait for a rerun, or you have to read up or hear about it from somebody else. On Facebook, it's there. So after, for example, our live streaming today, there's a way to build or look into that archive and say, okay, what was shared at this day? Is it something useful? Can I revisit that? So those are things that makes it very different as an influencer, as a trainer, to actually engage that community. Because one, it's targeted. Unlike TV, where if I ran an ad before, my assumption is there's a lot of spillover in terms of the people who see it versus the people I want to see it. On Facebook, you actually built your community, and you know that your followers or your community are following you because you're talking about a certain type of training, or they're following you because of what the type of content you share. And that's very specific and highly targeted. But on top of being specific and targeted, it's capable of scale. Filipinos now spend about 4 to 9 hours a day on Facebook. Filipinos also access their mobile phones, and their access to the internet is usually Facebook first. So if you look outside Metro Manila, where Facebook is free to access, right? The internet to them is Facebook. So that gives you broad reach. You suddenly now have nationwide reach at a scale of about 60, 70 million Filipinos. No TV channel has that much reach at a single time. So I think that's the point I'd like to share, like why it is such a powerful platform to share your ideas through. Okay, cool. So let's talk about Facebook Live. Now, Facebook Live, you have the capability to run live in multiple layers as well. So there's a way that you run live to a select group of friends only. There's a way to run live to broader unfiltered community. You could run live specific to an event page as well and control. So what I'm trying to say is there's a way that you control who sees and who's your audience, right? So you could create an event and the event attendees are the ones who see it. Or you could go and run it for total viewers as well. Now, live, since it's running off the net, it's running on relatively lighter bandwidth. There is a few seconds delay, so something to keep in mind is if you're gonna go live, you start the live video just before you could even start talking, right? Viewers can access the video, they can interact with you. So a little tip if you're running live is that you interact with them as well. So let me go through a few tips on how to go through that. First is, how do we start using Facebook Live? So in this mobile first community, I would say that it's not impossible to run live off your desktop, but I would show how to utilize it from your mobile phone, like how all the teens and all the young people are doing it and all the influencers. So you could run it on any phone platform, Android or iPhone. You can go live from a page. So for example, the STD is going live right now, or you as a speaker can go live as well. You could enable certain things like functions that are there, such as icons, communication, topics, and hashtags, so that people can interact with you. So one, you could look up a lot more information, but before you go live, there are a few things that I would like to remind you of. First is, make sure you are connected. The worst thing to happen is that you're starting, people spent and lock in their hour. Like today, if I were to connect with you and I lose my internet connection, that would be something that's gonna disappoint a lot of people. So make sure you have good connection. Make sure to check speed test. These are very basic things, but build that up. Next thing is tips, right? My tips would be build anticipation, like any event. So I used to work for SM, as mentioned by John earlier. And part of what I used to do for SM is help promote things like concerts at the arena or movies in theaters. And if you think of that, how long before a movie comes out do you start seeing a movie ad? How long before a concert are you aware that the concert's about to happen? So that people could set aside the time and their schedule to actually attend and participate live. So those are things that you would like to do. Now, make sure that you provide information about what you're doing and why it is essential, right? And then interact the same way John's managed the Q&A for us today and asking questions on your behalf. If you have questions or your community is asking questions, you could almost react real time. You could even like, heart, or a thumbs up the questions that they put in and manage that, right? And if someone else is holding the phone for you, like if you're fortunate enough you have your son, daughter, or spouse who's happy to support you in this project, have them help you out and be your producer and say 3, 2, 1, live, right? And it's gonna be a lot better that way. One thing I wanted to share is that we started helping a lot of artists. So like you guys, people who've run concerts, events, these people are now stuck at home, unable to run live concerts. And so we've worked with them, and there's this thing that was it's just 2 weeks old, really scaling across the Philippines, generating a lot of support for the situation is Bayanihan Musikan. And these are your musicians in the Philippines using and getting introduced to live and re-engaging their customer base through that. Now, during your live video, how do you do this? Make sure you're using the right product, right? You're using a good phone. You've made that decision on how are you going to present? Is it best to share it vertically or horizontally? And if ever you are looking to share things, take a look at how vloggers do it. There's a way that they shift cameras and sort of are able to share a PowerPoint slide, a product, and then shift back to themselves as they're speaking. The consumers would like to see you. The consumers or your followers would like to see you. People who'd like to follow want to see you talking and sharing that information. Next is interact with them. If you were facilitating training and people raise their hands for questions, treat that the same way during a live video. Check in with them and say, okay, am I clear? How are we doing? And maybe during that broadcast or post-broadcast, interact with the comments. The same way we're looking to do a post summary, interact with them and find a way to catch up and summarize what's happening. Now, after you've gone live, make sure to clarify that you're ending that video and congratulate people, and congratulations to you if you've ever done this on your first live video. After you go live, you now have stored data that you could edit. So if you know how to edit some video, you could trim, crop out all the technical checks that you probably need to have, and actually leave something that is easier to share and it's good for people to visit or look back to. So I'll pause here. And if you guys have questions about this, I'm open to hearing any questions before I move on to talking about Messenger.
Yes, Ash, let me just ask a few questions from the Q&A box. Thank you so much for Facebook Live. I learned so much. I didn't know that there were so many tips in doing it. I thought you can just go directly live and then just let everyone watch you. But these are very useful tips. Especially, I like the preparatory period, that you have to build anticipation so that it will be able to create a following first before you actually go live. But let me just get some questions from the Q&A box. So from Karen Aguilar of Dexcom, she said that some companies feel that that Facebook is not a secure tool to share company information. How can we convince the management to use it and ensure that it is actually secured?
So I do understand that that's generally a risk because you have people that are using the platform not for work specific. They don't have their profile. It also might be that the employees themselves don't like to show everything about their lives with management, right? The same way kids don't like their parents to be their Facebook friends. So I think I'll be sharing something later in the presentation about workplace, which is actually industry grade, secure. Even banks use it. So there, just for example, a number of banks in the Philippines, like Metro Bank, use this platform called Workplace. It gives you a lot of the functionality that I'm sharing today for Facebook, but in a lot more secure level where you could tier security levels where you can have certain groups that are extremely private. But for those of you that are looking to start this out and you say, okay, I want to use Facebook, I don't want to use Workplace, that's probably a paid service. Let's see what we can do. Facebook has security settings. So first off, before you even get started, make sure that everyone with your team looks at two-factor authentication, just so their accounts don't get locked. And two-factor is basically something they know and something that is verified. So when you log in, a message has to go into your phone and you have to put in that code. And nobody else in the world gets that message unless they have that phone number as well, right? So that's one thing. The second part in terms of security is take a look at the security settings you have. Like, what are you sharing with the public? Is your page or profile public? Is your group public? You could change all those things where you're sharing to specific or small groups or sharing to a broader audience. And depending on what your agenda is. So as a company, you might go live and start presenting something to the globe as this is what we're doing for this situation for all our consumers. Alternatively, you could have a bit more private setting for this is all their managers. We're going to have a management meeting and we're going to access or announce this internally. And the people or the audience is a close group specifically to employees only. So there are things such as that that you could do within Facebook itself. I hope that answers your question. What is provided is I would recommend taking a look at security settings. I will show that information towards the end of my slide as well.
Just one quick question, Ash, and I'm sure you can answer this very quickly. On a private group page, can you do Facebook Live?
Yes, you can, and the audience would only be those within the private group.
Cool, thank you. Go ahead, you may now use the remaining time left.
All right, let's talk about Messenger. And I'll drop off my headset in a bit, but Messenger is something that's taken the Philippines by storm, right? 1 in every 2, or maybe more than 1 in every 2, more than 50% of the total population of the Philippines at 110 million Filipinos has Messenger. And it's almost equivalent to internet penetration. So you think of how it is today, it's no longer the young person's messaging platform, right? I'm sure some of the titas still have other platforms, the color purple one, but if you think of where we are today and how we look at it, right? Messenger is across all age gaps. It's no longer just for the young. Even your grandmother, grandfather probably is on Messenger too, right? Your parents are on it, your kids are on it. It's a platform that is across all. And when the Philippines used to be the text capital of the world, it's now the messaging capital of the region, right? And we definitely utilize Messenger a lot. So we've done a lot of things like commerce on Messenger. We do buy and sell through Messenger. A term that's specific for the Philippines is HM po, right? And that's basically, or HMSIS. Basically, we're doing commerce very differently from the rest of the world where we interact and we're very communal about it. So it's very good. And fortunately, it's so essential that if you think of Globe and Smart or the telecommunication companies in the Philippines, they've pivoted to actually provide this as an essential package that they offer free within their platform because they know that that's what their consumers want. So let's talk about how you reach your community. And so something's quite personal to me about trainers, facilitators. So just for context, my dad also does or is in the same industry as you guys. And I know that one of the most powerful tools that he has in his arsenal for reaching his community has been email marketing, where he provides some updates about what he's looking to share and actually invites his community to an event he's going to run or gives follow-ups in terms of products or trainings that he's built and little snippets of information that's necessary. But the problem with, my dad's Raju Mandhyan. I don't know if you guys know him. Some of you guys might know him if you're in the industry. So he's been in the industry for about 15, more than close to 20 years now.
Amazing, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so just for context on that, so with email marketing, and this is a very optimistic rating that I've put in there, right? Where when you send out emails and you continuously email, now assuming you do everything absolutely right with email marketing, I'm not saying that it's wrong, but if you do it absolutely right, your open rate is still at best around 20%, right? If you have a 20% open rate, that doesn't even count the engagement after that. That's just people opening and looking at what you sent. There's a second layer of filter, which what do they do about that? And that's far less, where you probably get 1 to 2% of that 20% that eventually clicks, signs up, or participates or reaches out to you. Now, on the other hand, I took a very pessimistic view across the globe on how Messenger's open rate is, where at worst, it's 75%. When you receive a message, people probably leave the number in that image that I have there. It probably mirrors my email from my email account, where I have a folder of things that I'll never open. And you know what I'm gonna do? Once a month, I'll probably right click on that and say, mark everything as read or delete everything. But on the other hand, if you have a little red icon on your Messenger app, there's that itch, I gotta look at it. I gotta at least read it. And that's a higher open rate than ever before. The next thing you can do, and aside from open rate, is there's a way that you specifically engage with the community. So we talked about going and running live videos. Now you can retarget people that have watched your video without even needing to get them to fill out a form, sign up. You could automatically send them ads that direct them to message you. And once they've messaged you, you could maintain that communication. There are certain things that you could do with Messenger, such as quick replies, bots, as well as keeping your community engaged. And to the example I had a while ago in the Philippines, and as mentioned by John a while ago, I used to work for Lazada. And the funny thing is, Lazada had to evolve and enable communication within their platform. Why? Unlike markets such as the US or Europe, where if the price is stated, the information is stated, it stops at that. In the Philippines, the price is listed there, the image is there, the product information is there. The consumer would still like to check or double check the information and talk to somebody. So they are gonna look at discount ba, if the price is there, magkano po kahit na the price is there. And that's because we build trust that way. We are very communal in a way that if we hear another person, and if you see the way we communicate, total stranger, we're calling them sister. Because we want to build some sense of relationship. I showed you trust. You show me trust too, and therefore I can engage. And same thing you should do with your community, is build trust and reply or communicate with them. Unlike an email that was mostly one way. Next is messaging is across generation. So if you take a look at the penetration of the platform globally, it's almost equally split across millennials, Gen X, and boomers, right? And even the younger generation, they might be more on Instagram, they might be more on TikTok, but as a messaging platform, they're on Messenger. So you see it as a highly strong messaging platform as well. And what can you do with messaging? Once you have that big of a community in there, it doesn't stop as a communication platform. It's a platform that you could use to acquire or raise awareness. Acquire customers. So you could fill out information like, okay, throughout a bot or instant replies, you could set up, ask people to provide their name, their address, the type of product that they're looking for. And then you enable quick replies like, okay, what type of training are you looking to engage with? And then you could enable that automatically with the system. When they say a keyword, it provides certain information or provides a certain service. So there's so much that Messenger can do. This is just the tip of the iceberg. But how do you get started with using it as a messaging platform? So first, let's take a look at understanding your audience, right? You get started with who are the people that you are building that community with. My pain with email marketing is that sometimes we are unable to segment and understand who the audience is, to the point that, I'll give you an example. Actually, just earlier this year, I bought a printer from one of the malls, back when going to retail malls was still a thing. And they asked me if I didn't mind providing my email address for an additional discount. I did, right? But what happened was I bought cartridge for a printer. What they did was send me an email that was generally spam, because they sent me every product or probable printer ink available in their store within the next month. The thing is, they had information of what printer I bought, printer ink I had. They know that I just bought one. So why are they showing me 30 other different types of printer inks, right? And generally we do that as well. When we build email marketing, we want to provide content of everything we are doing as a person. But the problem there is that it does not meet your consumer's need. It's not a perfect fit. So with that, determine what your objective is and what the scope is, and then develop a strategy on how to communicate with them. And then once you have that, build your experience and make sure that you continue driving awareness and engagement. And try to make sure that, lastly, before you go, is that it's always on, regardless of time of day. I know that that's a lot of information, so there are tips and tricks on how to utilize it or do it. And I'm leaving the links here. We'll be providing this so that you can access it later on and learn more on how to leverage Messenger as a platform. I'll talk a little bit about workplace. To the question earlier on how, if my company was wanting something a bit more secure, how do we do that? So there's a available resources. You could actually just look up Workplace on Facebook and there's a group about it and you can see the content that we have for it. But generally what Workplace does is it provides some information. So I'll let a video play and explain that.
I really enjoy not having to go through corporate communications to engage with either 20,000 people or to engage with my leadership team. I like being able to talk in my authentic voice, not some corporate jargon. Workplace, so similar to Facebook. Many of our team members knew how to use it. Once we got everyone involved and engaged and motivated, whether it be through pictures and posting, we knew that they could interact with the product easily.
It takes a hierarchy and flattens it out. So the idea that somebody could reach out to the head of HR, they could reach out to the chairman, the CEO, it really has provided, I think, a different way for people to interact and engage where they might not have felt that that was a line they could cross.
We now have 70% of all our groups on Facebook Workplace are people around the world who never had the opportunity to work together.
No matter where you sit within the organization, you all come together. It's almost like you all come together in one meeting room. We all can come together on Workplace.
When I exchange on Workplace with people who work in my team in Brazil or Japan, I feel that as if we almost sat next to each other in the same office every day. So reducing the distance for me is the main benefit of Workplace.
With Workplace, it's our people that create the messages. They start the conversations, they drive where they want to go. Their voice is really the tone of the organization versus something polished out of a corporate communications team or sitting kind of stagnant on an internet. It's far more interactive and engaging.
Employee resource groups have really blossomed with Workplace. So we'll have a large LGBT population or empowering women groups. They're able to connect with like-minded people to find it really more than just a job, and Workplace has really helped facilitate that.
How do we bring all 70,000 employees together? There's only one way to do that, being connected on Workplace, and that makes dialogue and engagement that much easier.
So with that, just to summarize on Workplace, I think it has a lot of the functionalities of Facebook built into or turned into a corporate tool. Just to let you guys know that there are certain groups that might be able to get Workplace for free. So there is Workplace. If you're an NGO, you could probably get that for free. If you're an educational institution, there are ways that you get that at a different rate. So I will provide this with links and you could explore that further and check if that's something that fits your company. But to wrap it up, I think I'd like to also share a few other things that we have at Facebook, right? So a while ago, somebody raised a question about safety, security, like my company doesn't feel like Facebook can be secure. There are ways that you could make sure to utilize the platform and control and make it more secure for you. There are ways that we manage the whole community as a whole in terms of how we allow people to engage or behave on the platform. Then lastly, there's a lot of things that we could utilize for educators. So let me open a link. If you can see my browser, there's a bunch of resources available for the Philippines specifically to explore about topics on how to learn, how to teach, identify scams, how to think and identify even content online. How do I differentiate that? And then also how to be a bit more digitally savvy and leverage the platform. So there's a lot of these things. And I think the last one is how do you manage your privacy for something on the platform that you need and how that's going to work. Awesome. Thank you very much.